Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Maile, hello. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I haven't. This is a hilarious podcast because we've actually known each other for like 10 years, but I haven't talked to you in like 5. So it's a
Yeah.
perfect place to catch up. On midair to thousands of people. Why not, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's new in your life? What's exciting? Not related to gymnastics.
Not related to gymnastics.
Hard
Not
question.
much. Just school and gymnastics. That's my life pretty much.
Are you in Utah right now still in the summer?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in
Um,
Utah for the summer.
you have mountains and hiking and lakes, and it's so beautiful out there.
It is really nice out here. We have a lot of everything.
Is that the best part of the summer is being able to hike and just do whatever you want with your time?
Yeah, pretty much. And just having a little bit of extra free time.
I know, right? I forget when I went out like a couple years ago, but I remember flying in over the mountains and I was like, why do I live in Boston? I was like, what am I doing with my life that I live in a cold, dreary Boston compared to this?
Yeah, no, Utah's really nice. It's
Do you guys
beautiful.
not get out in the year because you're so busy with gymnastics?
Definitely not like we do in the summer, but
Yeah.
we still try to do as much as we can.
Do you ski? Do you ski? You're not allowed to ski or?
I'm sure we're allowed to, but I prefer not to during season.
Yeah, I meant more like personal. Like Tom would be like, no one's skiing, but more just like, yeah, I'd be
Yeah,
worried about my legs. So,
yeah.
well, I have many questions and some that came from some friends of ours. So, if you're cool with it, I'd like to just rattle through these. And I don't know, I like talking to people who are in the tail, not the tail end, but like you're not old, obviously, but like the back half of their career as a gymnast, and just like I don't know, asking questions and like learning and like trying to understand what we can all do to make the sport better. Because obviously you have a lot of experiences at elite, and then you have a lot of experiences in Utah. So I'd love to just rattle through all these questions and go wherever it goes. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's start with this first. This year coming up versus freshman year is probably very different in terms of, I don't know, you're probably sad, obviously, but what is it like now entering this year versus the first year?
I feel like the first year was everything was like very unknown. I didn't know what to expect during the season. I didn't know what to expect during preseason. I didn't know like my role on the team and like everything that I was gonna encounter. So,
Mm,
I mean, it's different in that aspect. I kind of know what's gonna be going on. And it's also different because like you said, this year I'll be a senior, which is
sad.
absolutely crazy. I feel like my 4 years have just like flown by like a
Mm,
blink of an eye. They always say it's gonna go by fast, and then you're like, no, and then it's here.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, it's just super exciting. We always have a great like time during season, and obviously it's like a hard time, but you're prepped and ready, so
Mm.
it's exciting.
Yeah. Do you enjoy competing in competition season the most, or is it like the preseason getting ready or like off season? Like what is your favorite part of the year?
I think competition season is my favorite part of the year, mainly
Yeah.
because like preseason we're gearing up, we're getting ready, we're like trying to get super strong. That way during season we don't have to like push too hard on conditioning and stuff. So preseason's a grind for sure.
Mm,
Season's a different type of grind, like you're just
mm,
competing weekend after weekend versus like preseason you're grinding every day.
yeah.
So
Yeah. My
it's a
experience
little
from
different.
college was like preseason was like straight up effort grind. Like you are constantly working and constantly putting in like time to get better. Whereas for me, I felt like competition season was more like, not it's not physical, but it's much more of a mental grind to like keep your schedule up and kind of stay on it and like hitting when you need to hit. Like it was a very different type of
Mhm.
pressure versus like preseason was just like I'm exhausted and tired all the time. I felt like
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Like preseason, you're just like so tired versus like in season, I definitely get like more mentally tired because like you're mentally trying to focus every single second at every single minute versus like just grinding all the way through.
yeah. So looking at senior year, like if you could go back to the summer before freshman year and give yourself advice, which is like the most cliche question of all time, but like what would you tell yourself? Because there's so many people that will listen to this podcast that are getting recruited to go to college or are freshman year or going to be sophomores. Like what would you say like you've learned now that you wish you knew when you were coming into college?
That's funny because like coming into college, I was like, oh, I know everything. Like I'm gonna be perfectly fine. Like I wish I could tell myself like just like open up and let the upperclassmen help you and like lead you and guide you because as a freshman, sadly to say, you probably don't know everything, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be a different type of grind than even elite or JO. So
yeah, and with that, right, like the gymnastics part of it is one thing, but like new team, new coaches, new practice schedule, new conditioning, new, like I think that plus just like the craziness of managing academics and personal life with college gymnastics is like completely different versus like in high school. Like on me, like your parents help you a lot, you have your own like set of things you do, but that's like completely different in college, right?
Yeah, I agree. Totally different. And I think that was one aspect that like I struggled with personally is because like I was homeschooled since third grade all the way until I graduated. So I think the academic things was almost harder than like the gymnastics aspect, and the social aspect was also hard because like I wasn't getting out and communicating with people that weren't just in the gym. Like that was my circle, you know? And
Yeah.
so like I think getting out, making friends and everything, that was a little bit difficult too, but you kind of like settle in and it takes time, but once you like get it, it makes sense.
Yeah, I've always been so curious about that is like the challenge of like the social and academic world when you're homeschooled and stuff. Because obviously, around me, I work with a lot of elites who are homeschooled right now, and it's there's nothing bad. There's pros and cons, obviously. That's a conversation for a different time. But like, it's got to be brutal to like, I don't know, meet a whole group of friends who don't do gymnastics, and you're like, oh, you don't spend 30 hours a week training in the gym all the time. Oh, okay, this is a little weird to like teach you about gymnastics.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it a little harder to like relate to other people, but at the same time, it like opens your mind and you learn a little bit about different things, which is like a good thing, you know? It's kind of
Yeah.
part of
Did
growing.
you room with a gymnast your freshman year, or was it like somebody non-gymnastics?
Yeah, so actually, my freshman year, I roomed with my whole entire class. So it was
Whoa.
like all four of us in a dorm. So it was a
Yeah.
lot, but we tried to make a lot of different friends, and all three of my other classmates weren't homeschooled. So that helped me a little bit,
Mm.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
aspect.
Give you some
So,
bumpers and like guide rails.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the benefit too of like an upperclassman is the upperclassmen that I had were definitely like obviously they were helpful in gymnastics, but they were more so just like the nuts and bolts of like getting used to a college campus, where your classes are, where the dining halls are, like how to like meal prep, how to like get stuff ready. Like that stuff is so like you go from a homeschool environment in just a college, non-college environment where like you don't do any of that stuff for yourself. You don't grocery shop for yourself. You don't plan your own stuff. You don't drive yourself around. And now you have to do everything. And like I feel like that's a reason why a lot of people get overwhelmed in gymnastics that first semester is less the gymnastics and more like the logistics of planning a day and getting it all together.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, we don't have to do very much for ourselves when we're at home. And when you're homeschooled, you're not even walking to class or anything. So it's like just like figuring out your schedule and everything. But like I feel like once mid fall semester comes around, you're kind of settling into everything and just all starts to like really click and you figure out what you need to do.
Yeah. And how do you get through that? Is that like master calendar? Is that like leaning on people? Is that like talking to your teachers? Like, how do you get through that first semester? Because that's a rough semester for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I leaned a lot into like my coaches. I have a really great coaching staff, always have. And I mean, Tom's really good at being understanding and communicating with you. And as long as you communicate, most of the time, everything will be okay. So I just feel like leaning into people that you probably feel like you wouldn't, but it's really helpful too.
Yeah. And let's get that conversation going too, because I think a lot of people in the recruiting process are like, they're just trying to get to their school, get to their team, but they get there and they're like, oh, now I have to like train with these people. And like, this is my coach now. And it's very different. I mean, obviously I'm very good friends with Tammy and Sorin. So like, that's a whole different change for you going from how many years you were coached by them to like blink of an eye. Now you have 4 different coaches. Right. And like, that's gotta be a really hard change to go from the elite world to college to have such a different coaching change.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised by Tammy and Sorin, my club coaches, and it was very different coming here. And I think Tom did a really good job at realizing that I hadn't worked with anybody else. And he took the time to like get to know me as an athlete and how I work and what I respond to, because everybody's a little different in that aspect. And all of my other coaches at the time did a really great job of like understanding that I did come from the same coaches, so I wasn't used to a lot of different coaching styles, but they're awesome.
Yeah, and you like at the point where like 10, 15 years with the same coaches, like you just know each other inside and out. You can like finish each other's sentences at that point. Like, and you have to go to a different situation where you probably have to communicate a lot more about like what you need out of training, what they need from you, how you're feeling, like all that kind of stuff. And like, I feel like that's got to be one of the hardest parts is like I don't know. The elite world is different, right? You're just like, okay, I just do what my coaches and I have always done. And we're used to this rhythm, but like now it's completely tipped on its head where someone doesn't really know you at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I feel like communication is one of the most important parts of the
Mm,
transition between club and college, because if you don't communicate what you need and what you like and how you work and everything, then it's hard for them to make changes to
yeah.
how you
And
would want.
And how do you do that, right? Because a lot of college people, and I know this for sure, as a freshman, you're like, you're barely new and like all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the fear in the college dynamic is like, if I speak up about an assignment or like my ankle hurts or something, like people are gonna like look at me a certain way, like let alone, some teams unfortunately have gossip within the team about like judgment for like, oh my God, you're just trying to get out of it. But like more so, I think their coaches are gymnasts are fearful that the people who recruited them, and now especially if you're on scholarship, you're like, oh, I have to be 100% every day, ready to work no matter what. And I feel like coaches don't want that because they know it's not sustainable. But there's like this like weird false expectation that you're never hurt, you're never sick, you never have to take time for
Yeah.
class. And I feel like that's not true.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like it stems a lot from like club, because in club that is the mindset a little bit. But I feel like when you come to college, they understand that there's so much more going on
Mm.
versus just gymnastics. Like you have the academics, you have the social life, you have injury, you have sickness. And I feel like for the most part here at Utah, they're very understanding. And my experiences have been really good, just communicate. And even if it's a little uncomfortable, sometimes the uncomfortable conversations are the conversations that need to be had.
Yeah.
So, like, and obviously, the more you communicate, the more they'll trust you, the more everything will work. So,
Yeah. And I think generally, as coming from the coaching point of view, I mean, obviously Tom's amazing and everybody else that is really great. But it's like oftentimes the problem that you think is a big deal isn't really a big deal if you can like get ahead of
mhm.
it and talk about it. The problem, it's a bigger problem when like you hide it for a month and then like you like come out of nowhere and you're like, oh, by the way, like my back's like literally killing me and I can't do a back handspring layout step out to save my life. Like then it's a huge issue because like, all right, now we have to figure this out. Like 9 times out of 10, they want to hear from you and they want to understand what's going on, which is not the current thought with a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like we had a girl my freshman year get a concussion. She waited like a whole month to tell our trainer. And that probably 2-week problem turned into a way longer situation. And so it's just like standing up when you probably should for yourself, because at some point, like you're going to have to stand up for yourself in your life. And it's
Mm.
just a thing you start to learn in college.
That's true, right? And I think injuries are the one that always comes up to it, but also that matters with like academics, like if you're struggling in a class or you need help, or if your schedule's not working, or you need
Mhm.
to get some like mental health and like sports psychology stuff. Like I think there's a lot of other pockets in just in general, but college athletics for sure that people think they're weak if they talk about that kind of stuff, or like, oh, I should be able to figure it out, like because I'm 18 now or whatever. But like there's like unlimited resources oftentimes to help you, and you just need to ask or just say you're
Yeah.
struggling a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. And I feel like the stigma around mental health is like slowly being broken down,
Yeah.
which is amazing. I love it because like I started working with the sports psych when I was 15 or 16, and I was very like skeptical about it. I was like, no, I'm fine. I can do this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then once I started working with him, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like I understand so much of why I think the way I think during my
Mm.
sport, and how everything other than my sport affects my sport, because you wouldn't realize how much your social or academics will impact what's going on in the gym until like you start to break it down. And I think it's really great that like the mental aspect is like really being destigmatized.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to kind of riff on this more because I mean, you and I both know the elite world very, very well. And let's be real, that conversation is like in the general public of gymnastics is coming more popular, but in the really high levels of competitive, so like level 9, level 10 recruiting, scholarships, and elite, that is still a really unfortunately uncomfortable conversation. Is like people need help with that. And a lot of coaches are just like, be tougher, figure it out. You just got to go. And it's like, that's not going to work. That's not going to help someone. And they expect nothing in the outside world to affect training. They expect that like you walk in, you get your job done, and you go home, and then life goes on. But like I think coaches really, especially at the elite level around the world, don't not that they don't respect it, they don't understand how important it is to have a balance and all that. Can you maybe share more on that? You don't have to if you don't want to, but
Yeah, no, I agree. Like since coming to college, I've kind of understand the difference between leaving it at the door and like bringing it in. There's some things you just can't leave at the door when you walk in the gym.
Yeah.
Like there's so many more things that just come in and you can't help but not bring them with you.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works. And I think in elite, it was a little bit easier because there was so much going on and I had so much to focus on when I was in the gym. Like I couldn't help but not think about gymnastics. But
Yeah.
at that same time, I was only doing gymnastics. I was
Yeah.
homeschooled. So like nothing was really going on in school. And like I had no social life. So nothing was happening in my social life. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's easier maybe in elite gymnastics, but it's just as hard because there's a lot more happening and going
Right.
on.
Right.
And at the same time, you have personal life, home life, and like, I don't know, I'd love to see like that aspect change a little bit. And I feel like it slowly is, but the more the better. So
yeah. And in my point of view is I'd actually like to see it be way more proactive. I think that's the problem that we're missing here is like, you think about like physical health, right? Like everything you could possibly need for like trainers and exercise and strength conditioning. Like there's so much stuff available for like those kind of resources. And then we oftentimes will do things way ahead of time, but like for mental health, it's also reactionary. It's not until somebody's having a mental block or anxiety with competition, or they're feeling depressed, that somebody comes out of the woodwork and says like, hey, do you know we have these resources? But then it's awkward to talk about because people feel bad bringing it up to everybody else. And so like, I think that what I hope to happen is that like gyms or clubs or national bodies are going to proactively offer those services. And along with everything else, we have a trainer, we have a sports dietitian, we have a mental health provider, whatever you need, it's there for you at all times. I think that will help people be destigmatized because they don't have to speak up about something and fear that they're going to be talked about before they actually go get their services they need,
Yeah, it's kind of like how I view like physical therapy. Like I'm not an injury prone person, but I go to physical therapy because it's like prevention.
Right.
Like, just go see somebody and talk to them before it becomes something bigger. And then it's almost like way harder to get it under control or to feel better about it. And so I agree, like preventative measures and putting it out there and letting them know before it's exactly like you said, you're having a mental breakdown and then you really need it at that given moment.
Yeah, and the same way that I've never seen a gymnast who didn't struggle with some sort of like nagging thing or had these moments where they had to back off on training because they're sore. I've never seen a gymnast or any high level athlete not struggle with competition anxiety or bouts of depression or a breakup sadness or family issues bleeding into the gym and training. Like it's just like literally there's not a single person on earth who doesn't deal with it. Some people just hide it better, right? But everybody has those problems. Everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's kind of like the fake it till you make it situation, but
exactly.
Sometimes you can't fake it anymore.
Yeah,
It doesn't work.
There's a place for that, but like that's not a good sustainable long-term strategy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is your cat like destroying your computer right now? By the way, is she okay? I see your cat like
My
running
cat?
around. I just want to make sure.
Oh no, you're good.
I saw him running in the background. I was like, does she know that her cat might be wrecking her apartment right now? But it's okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so on coaches, yes, Tom is great. Shout out Tom. But also we need to give some serious roses and praise to Tammy and Sorin, right? So Tammy and Sorin were always like gave me shining light in like the 2015 like world when I first met them with like Make It Right camps. But like I always had just like this like shining beam of light because they're just like good people. Sorin and Tammy are really nice. But for me, I mean, I met you when I think you were 13 or something, and I just started Shift, and I just was like, wow, they like genuinely have a family environment. They care about you as a human more than your gymnastics, like, and even like winning juniors and all that kind of stuff. Like they always were like, whatever Maile wants, it's like her health is first, and like we're gonna get there along the way. But like to see them kind of have a spine, honestly, in an environment that was very, very not good, let's just keep it there, was so impressive to me. And so I would love to kind of hear from you how important that is for someone going through that as a kid, because there's a lot of elite coaches and a lot of governing bodies who are listening to the podcast, and they're on the other side of some really tough conversations. And if they can hear it from someone like you, they might understand why it's so important.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I had great club coaches, Tammy and Sorin, like they were honestly the best. And as hard as elite gymnastics is, they were great at the balance of pushing and pulling back. And I think that's something that really helped me be able to reach like my full potential, because you can't always reach your full potential by just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. At some point you're going to break.
Right.
So, and like you said, they had a great spine and they fought for me in the moments where I needed to be fought for. And like there was some some moments where I was just like, why would you do that for me? Like, I feel like all the other coaches would just let it happen, you know?
Mm.
Like, I struggled a lot when it was like my early elite days. Like, I didn't do well sleeping away from home. And, you know, Tammy specifically, because she's like my second mother, and, you know, she just took me under her wing and did everything she could to help me. And then towards the later times when I was doing really well, you know, things were great. I don't know, it was just like exactly like you said, a family environment. They were my mom and my dad when I traveled with them, and
Mm.
they stood up for me a lot. And I think that's really important, because if your coaches aren't going to stand up for you, who's going to? Because at that point, you're just doing whatever you're told. You're
Mm.
so young and you just want to do everything you can to reach your goals.
Mm.
But sometimes you don't know the difference between right and wrong.
Right.
And I think it's important to have those people who are going to do that for you. And if your coaches aren't going to, like, who's going to? Because your mom's probably not going to, or like overstep those boundaries or anything
Mm.
like that. But your coaches have that power to do the things that you can't do.
Mm. Yeah, and I think obviously there's a role for parents to step in when it comes more towards like bigger conversations around like the gym and the training methods and like all that kind of stuff. But then there's things that, like you say, only the coaches know around workloads and around injuries and around, you know, mental things. And like only an in-tune coach who's with you all the time will understand and know, you know, what's too much and what's not enough. And I mean, let's just be real. Like there's a lot of people who are going to listen to this that are in governing bodies, and like there's benefits and cons to having a decentralized come every once a month thing. One of the cons is that the head coaches or the national team coaches see you once a month, once every other month. They do not see the ins and outs of every other week and every other day. And so that was something that I noticed that I really respected about Tammy, is that she always, and Sorin too, would always be able to say like, no, we're not doing this if it's too much, or like, yes, we can do this. And that was my experience from just looking on the outside and talking to Tammy and Sorin, was like, they don't see, like the head coaches aren't training with you every single day all the time. So how do they know what you can and what you can't do and where your skills are at? And I felt like that was something I always respected for them, because if you had the start of an injury or something like that, they were always the first to be like, no, we're done, you know?
Yeah, no. And like, if you watch my elite gymnastics, I didn't have the hardest skills
Yeah.
because I couldn't do the hardest skills safely. And they were always like really strong about that, is like, you're going to do what you can do cleanly and nicely, because that is way better than chucking these huge skills that you're probably going to get injured on, and then it's not even worth doing. And like, I don't think I understood the value of that at that point in my career. But now, like, looking back, and I never had like a huge major injury in my career.
Yeah.
And a lot of like my teammates right now who are also prior elites, and we talk about our experiences and stuff, and like that's one of like the main differences I feel like I would recognize in my club coaches. That was like really amazing, because I feel like at that point you're just trying to get your D score as high as you can get it.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're going to have to give, whether that's in your execution or in your body, you know.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work that way. And so
Yeah. And I actually remember specifically, I don't remember what age you were, but when you were trying to get double fulls on vault, I remember like being there and watching you training it and watching them talk about it, and Soren just being like, not quite ready yet, like not quite ready yet. And like there was, I don't even know how much pressure there was behind the scenes for you to like get that as fast as you possibly could, obviously. But like, I just remember Soren being like, no, we'll get there when we get there. Like maybe he didn't tell you that, or maybe he did, but I was just like, maybe that's like those types of choices are why you probably didn't have a major injury, because when you were a kid and you were growing and you weren't strong enough yet, or you still didn't quite figure out the technique, it wasn't like, let's just do it and see if we come out the other side okay. Like those hard landings are brutal on a 15-year-old, you know what I mean? And so I feel like, again, it goes back to Sorin and Tammy having a spine and also having a sound moral compass of being like, no, it'll happen when it happens. Like it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
yeah. And I feel like with a skill like that, you can't just be like, oh, do it. You know, like you're going to train it for a long time. And with me personally, there was just like one day it clicked and it made sense. And that's how it should be. You shouldn't just be chucking it and landing a quarter short every single time. Like at some point it'll click with your athlete, and then it's going to be fine to do. And it takes time, and I feel like you just have to be patient. There's no reason to be doing something you can't do at the age of 14 or 15. There's so much left in your career at that point. And like kind of going back to like them having a spine is like, I got injured during Jess Lowe selection camp in 2017, and they were pretty much like, okay, this is like your choice. We need you to make the decision if you feel ready to like continue the selection camp and verify. And at that point I was like, I really want to go. Like, so I made the decision personally to take it on myself and go and continue the verification. But then when I did get selected to go to Italy, we were in Italy and we're training, and we had to make like 3 competition vaults on hard surface that day, and I did 2. And Tammy and Sorin looked at me and they're like, okay, that's good enough. Like, we know your foot's hurting. Like, let's just stop there. You're fine with 2. We trust you. And one of the overseers was went over to Tammy and Sorin and was like, no, she needs to do 3. And they were like, she's injured. She's doing 2. And so like, I feel like that's just something not a lot of coaches would be comfortable doing.
Yes.
But it should be something that is totally acceptable, because what's one more vault at that point? Like, if I made the first 2, what makes you think I'm not going to make the third of that? Like, I'd been doing them for 7 or 8 months consistently. So it's like, you just got to like weigh your pros and cons at that point. Like, is it worth the 1 extra repetition?
Yeah. And again, that goes back to, because Sorin and Tammy are secure in themselves and they have great moral compasses, they don't need your success to be dependent on their self-esteem, right? It's not going to be they're amazing and they're happy and it's so great if you do compete and you do well, and it's not going to be the end of the world when you don't do well, right? Because they still just care about you as a human. And I don't remember what meet it was at, but I remember when I was watching, it was some sort of championship on bars, and Sorin reacted the exact same way days prior when you had the routine of your life, and then you fell on something, I don't remember what, at a high pressure situation. He reacted the exact same. He gave you a high five and a hug, and you guys walked away together. And obviously you were in different states before and after. But I just remember being like, that's it right there. Because when you had the routine of your life, he was like, oh yeah, this is so great. And you just completely tanked on the biggest stage possible. And he was like, hey, that's great, we'll get through it. And I was like, my man, Sorin, my man, you know?
I think you're talking about American Cup on bars when I did my Jaeger and I like hit my heels.
Yes.
And I watched that routine back so many times because I get that exact same feeling. I watch him just be like, yay, good job, and gives me a hug, you know? And it's just like, I don't think at that given moment, because I was upset that I had just tanked on the biggest stage of my life, that I didn't realize how, even though I had messed up, how proud he was of me. Because like, you know, it's a lot of pressure for barely 16-year-olds, you know? And I think it gives you a lot of reassurance when your coaches are like, you know, that's okay. And I'm still proud of you because this is a lot of hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's always a tell for me, is how coaches react to someone's both their great moments and their not so great moments, right? Like, sometimes I think in not the best situations, the great moments become, a coach observes that and says, look at what I did well. And then when it doesn't go well, they blame on the athlete and they say like, well, you messed up, right? It's like, well, you can't take the credit when it goes well and then dodge the bullet when it goes wrong. You have to be equally involved in both. And not only what you see on TV, but like, what happens after? What happens that night? What's the conversation that day, the next day? Is it like you go to the gym and you get punished because you fell? Or is it like, hey, these things happen and we love you still and we'll make it work. We'll make the correction. We'll figure it out. Like, that is the marker of a good coach for me. Like, very much so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know for a fact from watching you train that wasn't like on TV, Sorin was like, yay. And then he was like screaming at you, like behind the curtains, like,
yeah,
not happening.
No. Yeah.
On that, I think the other piece that comes up too is, shout out to Tammy, because on vault, obviously it's a situation where it was like a struggle to kind of get there, but then on beam, like, you were on fire with skills. Like it was unbelievable when you were younger, like kids you pick up. But when Tammy noticed you were struggling, I remember watching you work out one day, like something you were doing, she was like, after 2 or 3, it was like not working. And she's like, all right, back to the laser beam. Let's drill. Let's figure out why. And that's another very important thing too for elites and for high level coaches, is like, just because it's not going well doesn't mean 10 more until you get it right, until your back breaks. It's let's figure out why this is not going on. And Tammy had one of the most technical eyes to break things down that I've ever seen in my life. Credit to her for many other reasons. But I felt like that was something to note too, because it wasn't only about a struggle event. It was also about things that did really, really well. They were also able to reverse engineer and be like, okay, let's figure out why this is happening and let's try to save your body long-term and figure the things out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, Tammy just worked really well with me on beam, and I think a naturally good beam worker, but I wouldn't have been exactly the beam worker I am today without her because she is so technical and she's very like, why would we do 1,700 of these when we can step back, do the drills, do the laser beam, then get back up on the high beam and do 3 more. Like it's very just like a process, and you can't just expect the process to bounce right over to the high beam and be perfect.
Right.
Like,
particularly with you're doing beam
it.
literally every single day. You're going to come back to beam tomorrow. Like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like I did beam every day, like every day for 5-6 days a week. And that was just my life. And it's not like if it's bad one day, it's going to be great the next day. It's probably still going to be semi-bad the next day. So it's like worth taking the extra couple minutes to go down and do your drills or do whatever you need to do.
Yeah. And before we get into the topic of might be heavier of like what you would like to see change from your elite world, let's go with, are there any skills that were stuck in drafts on camera mode that you wish made their way out to see the light of day on beam or anything like that? Like are there any like things you were training and you're like, oh, this would be so sick if I could do it, but it never quite made the light of day? I think of one maybe, but.
So I trained side aerial, layout, step out,
That's
back kite for a long time.
Yeah.
That would have been a really fun one to compete. And then I didn't get very far with this one, but like flick, step out, flick 2 feet, back full, laid out. Woo! That would have been a fun one, but that one didn't get as far in the works as the side aerial lay pike. Like I had that one all the way up on the high beam and pretty much was there.
So close. Yeah. On that too is back to Sorin a little bit is like, were you always naturally like a really good bar worker? Like I feel like your swing elements and your basics on bars were so freaking good. And I've watched the 3-hour strap bar complex that everybody had to do when they were little. So I know that's built into the system there, but was that Sorin? Was that you naturally? Like, where does that come from?
No, I was not a great bar worker.
You're giving
I mean, like I was, I was so little and my hands were so small and that doesn't help. But like I had the worst shapes. Like ribs were like this, body was like that. And it was just like, not great, but like patience is a virtue on bars, I feel like. And it also doesn't help when you hit that growth spurt because you're like, oh, it clicked. You grow 6 inches
low bar,
and now everything's off. Yeah, like I lost my Tkachev. I was gonna go compete in elite routine without a single bar release because I couldn't do a Tkachev anymore because I squirted up 6 inches. Like it takes time, and I feel like I'm a very visual learner, and Sorin did a lot of like drawings on the chalkboard. And so it's like very different, but it helped me understand that if I tap down here, it's going to be equal at the same side, and that kind of aspect. So I think that helped me a lot too.
Yeah. Are there anything on bars that was on the draft mode as well that was like close to being sick but didn't end up in there?
I worked laid out Jaeger fulls for a while, but then again, I wasn't very close on those either.
That's pretty sick.
I don't know. I really enjoyed learning new skills on bars.
Yeah.
It's just like end combinations. I think I did it at American Cup. I went TOEFL, Chow, Pack, Maloney, straight into Rikna. And
that's exhausting just thinking about it.
It's exhausting, but honestly, the connection was so much easier than having to add an extra kip cast. Like at that point, you're just going. But that was really.
Did you ever do L turn work like through L and like half pirouettes to L to handstand? I feel like you had like some of the smoothest giants and pirouettes ever.
I did Heelys for a while, but I couldn't ever like get my shoulders all the way around to like grab the bar and stuff.
Yeah,
but
especially like if you have smaller hands, it's hard to not peel off and die. So.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess last landing spot before we go into the fun of NCAA world is, man. So just kind of open platform. Like there are, like I said, a lot of elites, a lot of national bodies. There will be a lot of people from the U.S. high up listening to this. And I'm just curious, like looking back on your elite career before we talk about college stuff is like, what would you like to see maybe changed or improved upon or constructive feedback? What things went well? Like, don't need to blow anybody's spot up, but like, what do you think as overall tones? Because there's a lot of kids in the elite system coming up through a very different world than what you lived through.
Yeah, I think the elite world is definitely changing for the better as of right now, and that's a great thing. I think one thing that I really struggled with was the constant comparison of one gymnast to another. Like, you could be at the top of your game and it's still probably not as good as somebody else's game. And
Mm,
I think it's okay to realize and recognize that your A game is probably not somebody else's A game, and you're probably not always going to be on your A game. Like, your average game is probably your B game, and your B game is great. But when you're on your A game, it's like amazing.
mm,
Um, so I think that constant comparison of, I don't know, like body image and skills and execution, it's just like everything is a lot. And they're always looking at something to nitpick,
mm,
which is understandable. You're trying to be at the highest level of your sport.
mm.
But I think there has to be a good balance of nitpicking and constructive criticism, because sometimes it did feel like it was just a straight like nitpick.
Yeah.
Um, and I know body images in gymnastics are still changing, and I'm thankful for that, because not everybody's going to be stick and bones. And honestly, the best athletes aren't always stick and bones in gymnastics. I mean, you look at Simone, she's muscular and she's strong and she looks nothing like Nastia Lukin, but they both won an Olympic all-around medal.
Mm.
So it's like understanding that not everybody's body is built the same way, but if we can safely and everything do our sport, like, why does it matter if I look different than the other?
Mm. I'm very happy you said that. I know that's a tough topic, and I know you've been through a lot on that journey, but you probably don't realize how many people will hear that clip and will be like, "Oh my God, that's me." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in the elite world, not in the national world, but like, you know how it is, man. Like in some gyms around the world, like there's still some just like terrible things being said about the way a young female looks when she's going through puberty or when she talks about it, and it causes serious carnage. I don't think people realize it does, but like it's gnarly, man. And like I think that we have a long road ahead to go still around strength and conditioning in the proper way. We have a lot of ways to go around body image and the appropriate way to discuss one gymnast, another gymnast, and skill work and stuff. And I think that I just thank you for saying that, because I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that, because I completely agree, but it doesn't mean crap coming from me as a dude,
Yeah, and I also like recently had a really long conversation with Tammy about puberty and everything, because I feel like you peg puberty out to be this horrible thing, and it's going to change your body so much, and it's going to change the way you do gymnastics, and it almost becomes like this psychological thing. You're like, oh man, I don't want to hit puberty, and then as soon as you do, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do my gymnastics. Like, I have my menstrual cycle now, and like my body's changing. Like, how can I do this? Like, how am I supposed to do this? When in all reality, like, not much is changing. And I feel like when your coaches and everybody around you is like, oh my gosh, once you hit your period, you're going to change and everything's going to be different, and you're probably not going to be the same gymnast anymore. Like, it almost becomes harder, because it just becomes like this psychological effect.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, it's just, I feel like I kind of recognized that and realized that, because around when I was a young athlete, I was like, oh man, everything I could do just not to start that.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, thank you for talking about this, because I think a lot of people, as a cultural stigma in gymnastics, this has gotten much better, that like, not only is it like puberty is terrifying, but it's also like a bad thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I can't believe we're going to grow and like, we're going to change shape and gymnastic stuff. But like, puberty is a good thing, bro. Like it makes you, how do you think you get stronger? How do you think you do like real powerful skills? Like it's not like, it's not a magic equation of like, you just like, you're not strong enough as you could possibly be 16 versus 12. And like, I think the key is to the toughest part is from a straight up science point of view. We are asking kids in the most chaotic period of their life to do some of the hardest gymnastics they're going to learn ever. And I think that is the conversation that needs to happen in the sport, which is like, what do we ask of 12-year-olds trying to go 10 and elite? Like, are we really, is this okay? Like, we need to have like a moral conversation on that. But at the same time is like, if you can reframe it to, it happens, this train is coming, so deal with it head on, right? And like, what can you do for those 1-2 years that you can still make substantial amounts of progress towards your goals, but you can actually use it as a really good slingshot to be stronger and more powerful and get a lot of time in that you normally, you wouldn't really have. So I think that has to happen as a culture. We still have to have the proper resources, help people learn about what you do through puberty, and then also normalize it, because again, it's going to happen. It's not even questionable.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you talked like slightly about learning how to properly strengthen condition. And I think colleges are doing a really great job with that. Like I had never been in the weight room before coming to college. And I feel like it has definitely helped me become stronger and everything, and learning different functional aspects of gymnastics that don't feel gymnastics related, but are very much so.
Yeah. Right. It's hard for coaches to understand how deadlifting transfers to landing, right? And how doing things that are in the weight room transfers to, handstand blocking and stuff like that. But yeah, I think if I had to bet something, it'd be in 5 years gold standard, that would be adopted much more everywhere. It's great. There's great strength coaches who are gymnasts who are working there, work that we do and stuff. But like, I can't tell you who, but I can promise you some of your heroes in the national teams around the world, they lift. They really do.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the U.S. still has to catch up with, is doing it properly and understanding the push and the pull between gymnastics and non. But like, that is just like the most science supported obvious thing that gymnastics can do to help young kids get through puberty and be successful down the road. Look at Ellie Black.
Yeah.
She's a perfect example. The Downies, right? Like it's not even a question if they do it. It's stigma, right? It's back to body image. You're going to get huge and bulky. You're going to lose all your skills. You're going to lose your flexibility. You're going to get hurt. It's like, give me any paper that supports that. It's like bullshit. Like, it's just not accurate. It's not accurate at all.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Do you looking back on your younger, I mean, Tammy and Sorin were like probably the most open-minded to it, but just didn't have the resources. But if you could go back and do it again, do you think you'd start lifting in high school or earlier, or would you still wait till college?
Yeah, no, I would definitely want to start earlier. I mean, they even still had the stigma of like, you're just going to get bulky and you're going to look bulky.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's totally fair if you do it a certain way, probably. But if you do it the correct way, probably not.
Yeah. And I'll definitely take the heat on the medical and strength side. Is like, yes, if you take a football program and you give it to a bunch of gymnasts who have never lifted before, it's going to be a disaster. You're going to have people with back soreness. You're going to have people who really don't put on functional lean body mass. And it has to be very specifically designed to make you stronger and more powerful for gymnastic stuff. So like, there's a lot of work to be done on making sure it's not some random GA in a strength room who's just giving you the volleyball program, but like that for sure. But if you have a very specific sports performance program, which is a lot of information is out there, it's literally the best thing you can ever do to help a gymnast get to the next level, particularly in puberty, because like, you can only do so many impacts, right? You can only do so many turns before your growth plates start to hurt. So like, okay, we're pulling back on hours. What can we add here? Let's teach someone how to squat properly. Let's teach someone how to lift properly.
Yeah, I agree.
Dig it. All right, let's get away from the heavy topics. Let's talk about college. So something that's been really noticeable too is you went from the freshman year where like gymnastics was popular, don't get me wrong, but like the last 2 years, man, has been ridiculous. Like so much attention, so much publicity, so much fun, excitement around like the, competitions at a high level. Is like, what is it like being inside of that, like, that blow up of attention and fandom and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's super amazing that NCAA women's gymnastics is getting bigger. And I think that the blow up is definitely something that was already in the works and kind of just happened while I was here. And I think that it's super amazing. And I mean, being here at Utah, we have one of the biggest fan bases.
Crazy, man.
When we sell out, we're 15,000 people. And even when we don't sell out, we're probably still 12, 13,000. Yeah. And I mean, it's something I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it different than elite, like high pressure meets? Is it the same? Because it's obviously it's a lot of people, still a lot of people, but like it's got to be so different when they're all cheering for you in your school.
I think it's different, not so much like in the fact that there's more people, but like the pressure of college gymnastics is different than the pressure of elite gymnastics, because elite gymnastics is all individualized, whereas college, it's individual still, but it's way more team-based.
Yeah.
And I think it took me a while to accommodate to the team pressures because I had been in that individual pressure for so long. And kind of just realizing that like making a mistake isn't the end of the world because you have 5 other girls in the lineup to like cover your butt, and like realizing that the team aspect is so important. and like the bond that you build with them throughout your time here is going to be really important.
Yeah, I always felt way more pressure if I was competing for a score on a team than I was ever individual, for sure. And I didn't compete nearly at high level as you or other people, but like I always felt like extraordinarily more pressure when I was like first up or like in the middle of a lineup or something like that. Like, I don't know, like it's like you have your school in your back a little bit, and like, you know, you want to make sure you any team goal, in my opinion, is more significant than any individual goal. So
yeah, I think so too. Like I've done a lot in my career, but like I think winning an NCAA national championship title with my team will literally top everything I've done. It'll be so different.
Yeah. Do you think that the rise in popularity has become like because there's so many like national team members and Olympians that are now in it, or is it because of like the way we've structured the season? Is it the way that we've like, I don't know, like what do you think is causing such of this? Is it social media? Is it TikTok? Like TikTok could literally be the reason, but
I definitely don't think TikTok hurts for sure. Um, but I think it does help that a lot of like Olympians and stuff are coming to the coming to college gymnastics because, you know, they see them around and then they see that they're going to go to UCLA or Utah or Oregon or wherever they're going, and it brings that into them, and then they're like, oh wow, this is actually really enjoyable to watch. You know, I'm not just here to watch Jade or Grace or Kyla or any of them. I'm here to watch the team, and then you build a relationship with one team in certain, and then you have a fandom, and you know everything just kind of builds from there. But
I've been excited to watch this season in particular, and we were just talking with Olivia Karras, maybe, and her episode's coming out soon, but and Megan too as well, Skaggs. We were talking a lot about how like it's cool to see. I mean, people choose their own destinations of colleges, right? But it's cool to see the spread of elites and like really good level 10s and Olympians across multiple schools instead of it just being like literally the whole 2000 lineup goes to like one school, because it's cool to watch like Jade, for example, to watch her and her team versus like, you know, somewhere else. That's very exciting. And on top of that is some teams just coming like out of the woodwork and being like so good. Like Michigan State's a great example. Like it's so exciting to watch them have like this crazy year and have like some upsets or whatever you want to call them. But like that is so exciting. Like, I mean, I love all of the people who I've just talked about. Like I work with those colleges and like, I just don't want to see the same team win over and over and over and over. It's like, bro, come on. Like this is boring. But like this year, it was like a really good mix up.
It was really great, you know, and like you said, Michigan State is on such a great uprise. I think it's so awesome.
Shout out, Mike.
And I mean, like, there's just a lot of programs that are up and coming, and I think it's really fun. You know, nobody wants one or two teams to just be the front runners all the time. But
yeah. And speaking of TikTok, and speaking of something else that's new, is like the whole NIL situation, right? Like I was talking to a couple people about this. Is like, I don't know, like as a 17-year-old, the last thing on my mind was thinking about like how a brand deal or how possible sponsorship goes in mixed into it. And I'm sitting on the middle of the fence. You know, I like love that athletes can make money off their name and image likeness, but also I understand the back end pressure of what comes with that responsibility sometimes as a business owner and as someone who works with brands. Like it's tough sometimes to ride that line between like, you know, I don't know, doing something for a brand sponsorship and also just focusing on school. So as someone who is participating in this, I'd be curious your thoughts on what that balance is like and, you know, tips or words of wisdom to oncoming people looking at brand deals.
Yeah. Personally, I don't work with like a brand manager or a marketing agent or anything like that. Mainly because I did try it, and it just felt like I was so focused on my NIL stuff that it was like gymnastics and school kind of felt like a back burner, and that didn't feel natural to me. And it also becomes hard because you have to create so much content for those brand deals, and then your whole Instagram page is just brand deals, and you're like, nobody sees anything I do with my personal life anymore because every other day I'm posting about this or that. And I just felt like I couldn't organically create content. So I take deals as they come my way, or if I want to reach out to a certain brand, then I do so. So I think I'm a little different in that aspect, mainly because it's a great opportunity, but it's not something that like is totally something I want to pursue fully right now.
For sure. And I think that's kind of what Meg said too, was like, only picking brands you already either use or you believe in, or like there's something that fits your lifestyle. Like she was saying, we didn't go into details, but she's like, there's definitely some like cringe moments where someone like posts something of her friends and you're like, oh, you're like, girl, I know for a fact you don't use that at all. Like you've never talked about that before until right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. Like if you work with a brand and they reach out to you and they're like, I would love to work with you. And you're like, I love your product. I can 100% say that I can promote this to my followers and know that I love their product and they wouldn't be disappointed in it,
Yeah, it doesn't feel like,
helps.
I don't know what the word is. It doesn't feel like icky, I guess is the only way I can put it,
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're just doing it to do it.
Yeah. Plus, as an athlete, there's nothing more stressful than like, oh my God, I gotta make this other freaking post that I don't actually care about this. And I'm just doing it for like money. And I mean, everyone's money situation is different. I don't want to knock people, obviously, but yeah, it's just not worth it. I feel like you're kind of selling your soul a little bit to something you don't believe in. That's how I personally think.
I agree.
On the note of also like super high level competitions is, girl, you have some ice water in your veins. And it's crazy to watch you from the elite days. I don't think it was only college, but like, it was just wild watching you just hit under such high pressure. And I'm wondering, is that Tammy and Sorin? Is that you? Is that practice? Like what in the world? Because people want to bottle that up and store it away.
I don't know, honestly. I think it's a lot of everything. I had a great elite career and I did really well with hitting under pressure in elite. And that was individualized pressure. So I think it was a little different. I think team pressure is way harder. But I did think it started in my club career. I worked with Tammy and Sorin, but I also worked with Tammy Biggs a lot. And she's really huge on like keywords for certain skills. And I use those keywords still. And but other than keywords, I think deep breaths, something to calm your heart rate when you're going 250 beats per minute, it feels like, is definitely like something you can probably watch videos and you see me take these huge breaths. And I just think that's something that really helps me like calm down and focus in, and like when you've trained so much, at some point you just have to stop worrying and trust your training.
Right.
Because I feel like you've done at least 1,000 of these in your gym beforehand perfectly. And so it's like at one point you just need to take a deep breath, relax, focus on what you're doing, and just do it like you always do it, because like it's not worth like the extra stress.
Yeah, and I think there's a big key point to be taken there, which is you feel prepared when you actually put in the work in, right? So you have to do a self-audit to yourself of, if I peek and Meyer in the back, you have to do a self-audit of like checking yourself, like, okay, am I actually putting in the work to do 5, 10, 15 of these a day and feel comfortable? Because I forget the quote, but it's like, you don't rise to your expectations. You drop to the level of your preparation or something like that. It's like, you're always just cheating those pull-ups and those rope climbs and maybe one less beam series over here. Like it's going to come haunting you in your mind when you're like, oh my God, I should have done 5 more, so you have to earn the right to get in those high pressure situations by doing the work. But at the same time, once you do cross that threshold of doing so many, at that point, it's kind of like, all right, I have my few keywords, I have my things I need to do, but like, you just got to go. You know what I mean? Like there is just a point of allowing yourself to do what you've been training so hard for.
Yeah. And I also think like our beam coach here, Carly Dockendorf, does a phenomenal job with us, a phenomenal job with like our preparation and our pressure sets that we do in the gym to try and replicate as well as you can, obviously, the pressure of competitions. And I think the ice in my veins kind of comes from like wanting it so bad, like wanting to help as much as I can to like succeed with my team, because I feel like it would mean so much to me, like if I can do something to do it.
Yeah, that's super cool. I like that approach to it for sure. Like it matters. You know what I mean? Like you focus on things that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, okay, last question before we let you go is, on top of that is, we've talked a little bit about like managing school and managing life and all that kind of stuff, but like how in the world do you keep your head above water mentally, as we were talking about, like to just enjoy yourself and time? Because I feel like my conversations with a lot of elites or like just other professional athletes is you get so wrapped up in the sporting side of it, you lose sense of like just enjoying the ride of being in college and that kind of stuff. So like, what do you do to kind of keep a level head or like kind of manage your time really well so it doesn't all feel like stress all the time?
Yeah. I feel like time management is really important in college athletics because you don't want to be like, oh, I'm competing till 7 p.m., but I have a paper due at midnight. And I hate the feeling of procrastination and like, so I just feel like staying on top of your homework is one of the really important things.
Yeah.
Like, don't leave anything for the last minute because then it's just gonna be like an added stressor to
Mm.
probably an already stressful day.
Mm.
And trying to just manage like your priorities. I think like if you feel like social life is more of a priority because you're doing really well in the gym, then that's great. If you feel like you need to prioritize your sleep and your rest and your recovery because things in the gym aren't going so great, like you need to also recognize that. And I think it's important, but I also think it's one of the harder things to do because sometimes you're like, well, I just want to have fun because the gym was so bad. And that's totally fair, but everything within moderation, I feel like.
Yeah,
Learning
absolutely.
that moderation.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's how I try to keep my head above water. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. It's never always just going to be like this level playing field, but like learning the realms and learning what you need is definitely important.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say it because like, you know, there's endless amounts of extracurricular activities in college. You could go to all these things and go to all these parties and meet up with these people and see these shows. Like you could literally have an endless docket of things to do all the time. But you got to realize that as an athlete in college, there's a lot of people there who are not athletes and they are literally just there to enjoy the ride, man. They just want to, you know, do all the things, watch all the things, go to the parties, go to everything. And you have a responsibility as an athlete to safely, you know, to take care of yourself because all those things catch up with you if you're constantly just like doing a little bit extra here and you're skipping the sleep here and you're just like not really taking care of your homework here. Like all that catches up to you. So, but that's part of being an athlete is more responsibility. So you sign that line, you make that choice, comma, you have to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but like give yourself permission to take time to be away from the gym and like give yourself times, whether that's, you know, spending time with friends or going out, shows, whatever you want to do. But like, I feel like gymnasts in particularly struggle with that if they do give themselves an hour or two, they're like, oh my God, I'm so lazy right now. I need to be working till 2 a.m. I need to get all my homework done. I need to be studying more. Like, and I feel like that internally is a huge battle for a lot of gymnasts.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, just learning the balance of like, okay, I need a break here, or okay, I need to focus in here. And like recognizing that sometimes it's okay to say no to plans or say no to people because you're putting yourself before everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that how do we put this tactfully? Other people's lifestyles doesn't mean that you're not going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like I think that the FOMO is so real in college, bro. You're like, oh, I just want to go hang out with these people. I just want to go do this, or like I just want to hang out and like, yeah, I think that's hard too. Is like don't let somebody kind of get in your ear because you're not doing something just because you're taking care of yourself. You know.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And peer pressure is also like a huge thing. Like
huge.
I think peer pressure is one of the, I don't know. I do not agree with it. It's not my favorite thing. And it's like, if somebody doesn't want to do it, then so be it. Like that's their choice and that's their life. And that's a great thing because we all get a choice.
Yeah. And you never know what, even your best friends, like you don't know what's going on in someone's head behind why they are or are not choosing to do something. So I'll use my experiences in college. Like I had some friends that were really not into party lifestyle and they didn't want to go out at all, even when we were legal age to drink and stuff like that. And like, I was like, I'm not going to really dig more on why you don't want to. Like, who knows if you had a really tough past with parents and stuff like that. So I'm just going to leave it alone and say, okay, you know, and like your true friends, man, if you're true friends, they'll respect that. If they're giving you shit for it, they're not your friends and get away as fast as you can.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll say it so you don't get in trouble. But this was dope, man. I appreciate you taking the hour to chat and stuff like that. So is there anything else we missed? I think we kind of covered a great little gamut here.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I think we're good.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much. And then where can we find you on the socials just so we can plug all your goodies?
Instagram is Maile_O'Keefe. TikTok, I think it's just Maile O'Keefe. And that's about all I use.
We got it. Yeah. Twitter's dead, huh?
I don't use Twitter very much.
Gymternet Twitter is kind of toxic these days. So
it's a little tough.
Yeah. We talked a lot about that last of us. It's like, bro, these fans we love you fans, but like check your tweets, bro. Like you're too much right now.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that before we get ourselves in hot water with Gym's internet. We'll run away at that one. So, all right. Thanks, Mai. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, you too.
Later.